We have a coronal hole with some fast solar wind headed toward Earth, and lots of filament eye candy. Those stories and more in the news this week. Space weather this week is calming down comparatively to last week. As we take a look at our Earth-facing disk, we do have lots of active regions in Earth view, but only a few big flare players like region 3889. We've been paying close attention to that region. Most of the eye candy, though, has come from big filaments like this interesting looking number 3 here, and this big worm-like filament as well. We've got a couple other ones that we've been watching, but there just hasn't been any Earth-directed solar storms from these eruptions. In fact, some of the prettiest, like you'll see one launch right here on the 10th that launches to the south. Whoosh, right there. That was gorgeous, but look at it in coronagraphs. It really is kind of boring. There's not much going on there. We also had a filament eruption. You can watch this little guy right here. This is in the Earth strike zone. Whoosh, right there. But when we look at it in coronagraphs, look at this tiny little thing. Launches off to the east of us, and then that's about it. And that's really all that's been happening this past week when it comes to solar storms. Really, where we're getting the biggest stuff is from this coronal hole right here. We're expected to get some fast solar wind from this extended coronal hole, and that could give us a little bit of aurora that comes down to mid-latitudes over the next couple days, but not much more than that. Meanwhile, as we take back a look at this number 3 that was been rotating through the Earth strike zone, you can watch a gorgeous part of this thing erupt here to the south. Whoosh, look at that. And it was actually quite dazzling in coronagraphs. It's quite dense, but once again, not Earth-directed. Meanwhile, as we go back to the disk, we had another gorgeous eruption off of the west limb. You can see it coming up right about here. Whoosh, right there. That was a gorgeous eruption, but again, in coronagraphs, beautiful, but not Earth-directed. So we've really been dealing with that over and over again. Really, it's turning into getting some activity from coronal holes. And as you look to the east part of the disk, really not any big active regions to kind of replace the activity that we've been seeing here. So solar flux has been dimming down and things are getting quieter, but as we take a look at the sun's far side, we'll pull up our JSOC HMI helioseismology far-sighted viewer, and that actually shows us that the active regions that gave us a lot of activity just last week at the end of October, these regions have now rotated to the sun's far side, and region 3869, 3872, and even region 3868. These regions, look at this, look at all this darkness right here. These regions look like they're surviving their far-sighted passage. So in the next 3 to 4 days, and that's along with even region 3824 or 74 rather, these regions could be rotating back into Earth view with a vengeance over the next 4 days or maybe a little bit longer. And that means X-flares could be back on the menu with R3 level radio blackouts and the potential for more big solar storms. Switching to our moon, we are now passing through the full moon phase, with the full moon being on the 15th. And by the 20th, the moon will still be about 75% illuminated. So you night sky watchers, if you want to catch those dim objects in the sky, like, I don't know, maybe some aurora or the Leonid meteor shower that should be peaking right around the 17th, well, you're going to have this bright companion, so you're going to need to check your local rise and set times. Now, switching to our solar storm conditions and aurora possibilities over the coming week, we are anticipating the fast solar wind from that coronal hole that's rotating in through the Earth strike zone. So at high latitudes, NOAA's expecting minor storm conditions. In fact, they expect about a 50% chance of a major storm at high latitudes. And this should last from Thursday into Friday, with things kind of calming down as we move into the weekend. That's assuming we're not getting any more solar storms. So aurora photographers, enjoy a nice view over the next few days and expect things to settle down. And then as we move into mid-latitudes, well, the story's about the same. We're expecting active conditions with up to about a 20% chance of a minor storm at mid-latitudes. And then things again will settle down by the 16th. We should be back to unsettled conditions, and we should have a few days of rest before we start looking for new solar storm potential on the sun's east limb. And now switching to our solar flare and dayside radio blackout outlook over the coming week, we are still sitting well in the triple digits for solar flux, and this means dayside radio propagation is doing quite well. However, you notice that the numbers have dropped dramatically, and that's because we don't have as many active regions in Earth view, nor do we have as many big flare players. This luckily means the noise level has dropped from severe to moderate range, and this is likely going to continue over the next few days, possibly throughout the week, until new regions begin to rotate into Earth view in about 4 days. Now, NOAA is giving us about a 60% chance of M-class flares. This is at the R1 to R2 level radio blackout, and also about a 20% chance of X-class flares. That's at the R3 level radio blackout. But expect that risk to kind of dim down just a little bit, especially in through the weekend before things begin to pick up once we start seeing those new regions rotate into Earth view on the east limb. So you amateur radio operators and emergency responders, well, all I can say is enjoy the quiet. And now switching to our radiation storm and polar aviation outlook over the coming week. Everything is in the green this week. We are at the D1 normal range. This is at flight level 360 for you aviators. It's also the S0 quiet range for everyone else. We are expecting about a 10% chance for an S1 to S2 radiation storm, and this is going to continue throughout the next 3 days, with the risk rising just a little bit as region 3889 rotates to the sun's west limb. That's the region that's actually been giving us a bit of a threat in terms of radiation storms, but everything else is pretty quiet. So you frequent flyers, and this does include air crew and you high-risk passengers, you're all in the green this week, and likely everything's going to stay that way. So the space weather this week is quieted down a bit compared to last week. Now we do have some solar storming expected, but it's mainly from some fast solar wind from a coronal hole that's going to be rotating through the Earth strike zone here over the next couple days. Expect to get a little bit of a show of aurora at high latitudes over the next couple days, but likely at mid latitudes it's just going to be kind of touch and go. So aurora photographers, well, only if you're dedicated should you chase. And now amateur radio operators and emergency responders, well, that solar flux has dipped down a little bit, but we're still well in the triple digits, so radio propagation on Earth's dayside should be good. You should also notice that the noise level on the dayside radio bands has also diminished somewhat, as well as less long duration big radio blackouts. So enjoy this quiet over this next week, because that's about as long as it's going to last before things start getting noisy again as new regions rotate into Earth view. And now for you GPS users, well, things are looking reasonably good for you. We've kind of quieted down on the day side. We don't have as many radio blackouts. And on the night side, we really haven't been having any huge solar storms. We just have a bit of fast solar wind that's coming over the next couple days. So from mild solar storming is expected. So as long as you stay away from aurora and stay vigilant near dawn and dusk, well, your GPS reception should be pretty nice. I'm Tamitha Skov, the Space Weather Woman. Thank you for watching.